then drop it. Power Metal in person, what is this? Cenk, Uygur, John Iadarola, random videos in the lower third, Jessica Burbank. Okay, Jessica's on Rebel headquarters. Should you check that out? Of course. Okay, she's killing it over there, but who isn't? Let's be honest, everybody's killing it at Rebel headquarters. That's why you should check it out. And then after that, go check out Damage. No, before, of course, before John, I'm kidding.
Carry their way. Okay. As soon as this is gone, I'm going to the weekend. You can watch whatever you want. Watch Hulu, I don't care.
Okay, all right, guys. As usual, I start out in a jovial mood, which will immediately be over as soon as we start the stories. But we will pick it back up if we can get to an awesome story later in the show about how Rice Krispies treats are turning transgender, according to the right wing. Okay, you guys are gonna love that story. Okay. Now everybody bring it down because the world sucks, and now we're gonna deal with tragedies, of course, as we do every day, and of course the idiotic reactions from the right wing. Although Fox News has a twist. All right, John, take it away.
Supposedly, we'll see. Anyway, yes, we're going to be starting off with very dark material. People talking about what happened in Uvalde, so bear in mind that is the content of what we're going to be turning to now, starting with this.
So she had a friend next to her that she was pretty sure was already dead and was laying on the ground bleeding out. And she put her hands in her friend's blood and then smeared it, she said, all over her body. She wanted to look like she was dead. She was scared that the gunman was going to come back through that adjoining door back into the classroom, and she wanted to be able to play dead.
That is a reporter for CNN talking about her experience interviewing an 11-year-old victim in this week's most recent school shooting. Mia Cirillo talking about what she did to stay alive as, and we'll get to this, the cops waited for quite some time to actually clear that room. Mia, by the way, started off her day watching the movie Lilo and Stitch in the classroom. And within a very short period of time was being forced to camouflage herself with the blood of a friend of hers who had already been killed. So look, this is the devastating part of this where we get to learn about the experiences of these kids, what through our inaction we forced onto them. They're now going to bear the psychological torment for the rest of their lives. And we will discuss it so that we can understand, and perhaps with sort of a side dish of a vain hope that maybe some of this will get through, that any of the politicians or media figures who don't give a damn about any of this will be bludgeoned by the shame of not caring about the experiences of people like me. And we'll learn more about their experiences into actually doing something, although we've been through this many times before.
I actually thought of a ray of hope for potential change. I'm gonna get to that in a second. But first, the bad guys. So the Ted Cruzes, the Mitch McConnells, the Ron Johnsons of the world see that and think, yeah, no, I still want my check. I don't care that my constituents, in the case of Ted Cruz, their kids have to smear themselves in their dead friend's blood to be able to survive. Yeah, but I got $442,000 from the gun lobby. Ron Johnson got $1.2 million from the NRA. Donald Trump, through the 2 elections, got help to the tune of about $50 million. So Donald Trump, of course, going to speak to the NRA and congratulating them. Great job on murdering our kids. I'm not gonna hold back on anything. Republicans are monsters and they're definitely responsible for this. They have pushed for no gun control at all. This is the direct result of no gun control, and it is inarguable. Every nation on earth protects its civilians and protects its kids. This happens nowhere else on the planet, only here. Why? There's only one difference between us and the rest of the world. We have no gun control because we are lunatics, and our system is completely a criminal. Yes, I think all of those Republican senators are criminals who take bribes from this industry. We all know it. The only people stopping us from saying it is mainstream media, who shame you when you tell the truth. Those things are obvious. You know, we used to kid around about how Ted Cruz was a Zodiac killer. Well, Are you sure the Zodiac killer has gotten more people killed? So there's more horrifying stories about the kids and how they saved themselves. We're gonna get to that as well, and I'm gonna save the hope for it for the end here, but go ahead, Jessica.
Yeah, I think Miguel Cerrillo, the father of this young girl, said something really interesting. He said later that night, his daughter came up to him and said, he's coming to get us, talking about the shooter from the school. And she asked her father to get his gun. And I've been reflecting a lot about gun culture in the United States, and there's a huge divide in gun culture. I use guns for safety. I was in the range recently shooting a Glock 17, which is a personal safety handgun. And 2 lanes down, someone was firing a fully automatic weapon. And it made very clear the divide in this country. For some people, guns are used for fun. They're on the offensive. They use guns because they like the power they represent, and they're upholding the power they already have. And for so many other people, it's about being on the defensive because you're felt to be unsafe in this country because these other people threaten you. It's a response to the threat. And this situation right after the shooting with the Cerrillo family really paints that picture really well of what the divide is and where toxic gun culture lies in this country.
Yeah, I think you're right about people feeling defensive. I mean, I get messages even from people on the left saying, well, I'm with you, but at this point, I guess I have to get a gun since nothing is gonna be done, since no right winger will come out and say that they wish that this mass murderer had been less well armed. Like so well armed that, as we're gonna get to, an entire squad of cops are terrified to go up against the firearms that they will not block people from having. It's amazing. And then it's unleashed on these kids. So we're gonna give you a little bit more of the experience of Mia after camouflaging herself in the blood of her dead friend. She tries to reach out to the people that she has been convinced might be able to help, as you'll see in this video.
She and a friend went and were able to take the phone off of one of the teachers who had already been killed. And they called 911 and they were actually able to make contact with the dispatcher. And they talked to a dispatcher for a little while and told them what was going on inside. And Mia kept saying, telling me that she kept saying, we're in trouble, like please come, please come.
So she was terrified, and she did the only thing that she was told she was supposed to do, which was reach out to an authority figure. Now, as you already know, if you've been tracking this story, the help was not quick in coming, and she actually was forced to grapple with this. We're gonna go to one more clip, and you'll see what she has to say about that.
She said she thought the police just hadn't gotten there yet, that somehow they just weren't there yet. And she said, she'd been pretty stoic up until this point in the interview. And this was actually when she started getting emotional and started crying. She said, I heard the grown-ups later say the police were outside and that they weren't coming in. And she got emotional talking to me about this and said, why didn't they come in? Why didn't they save us? Why the police were outside? Like, she just couldn't, it was clear in her 11-year-old brain, I mean in my brain, why they wouldn't come in and help and save her.
Yeah, she was absolutely dumbfounded about that. Now she's an 11-year-old, she is a child, but she in that moment felt, I think, quite a bit like all of us are feeling. Why was it that it took so long? Why were the cops just standing by doing nothing? And that's the crisis that we're gonna focus on in the show, and that as a nation we'll talk about this week. But look, at the end of the day, those cops who didn't wanna actually deal with this issue, are they really any worse than the politicians who won't do anything? The media figures that defend them, those who are bought by the industry, as Cenk was talking about? Like, there are a lot of people who in one way or another were just standing around that school, not protecting those kids.
Yeah, I alluded to this yesterday, but I really want to read it for you guys because Jonathan Larson, our managing editor at TYT, had such a great tweet about what John just said. He said, I don't think congressional Democrats understand that voters see them as the cops standing around outside the school. And that's exactly right. And so now remember, the Republicans are not standing around outside. In that analogy, they're basically the shooters. So they're the ones saying no gun control ever. We all took our bribes. We all serve the gun industry. We don't care about the dead kids at all. They're saying that in unison. They're shouting it from the rooftops. We're gonna show you clips later in the show. None of them want any gun control or anything done. They don't, Republicans, it's a matter of fact. They don't care about dead kids. Their plan is to do nothing. You do nothing when you think, nailed it, this looks good, this is what good looks like to the Republican Party. Now the Democrats go, no, this is bad, it's really bad, right? But we're gonna stand around and do nothing. Schumer declared the next day, I swear to God I won't pass any laws. What a weakling, what an absurd coward. And then they went on vacation, they're all on vacation now. Your kids are dead and all the politicians are on vacation and the cops are standing outside. It is this, what you're seeing is an awful, awful symptom of the larger disease, which is that the powerful don't care about us. They've already rigged the system 100% to their own benefit. And it's so brazen that even when we have kids who have died and smeared blood on themselves to save themselves, they still say, no, we love the system exactly as it is. Even when it kills your kids, we don't care. We're not gonna change it 1%. Everything I've said is an indisputable fact. So this is the sick, sick country we now live in. It's nowhere near a democracy. 88% of Americans in a poll that just came out, 88% of Americans want federal background checks, including in the overwhelming majority of Republicans. Yet Republican politicians don't care even about their own voters. They say, who cares about my voters? The only thing they care about is, where's that donor money? Because they're all sick criminals.
And the one piece of legislation that has potential to pass universal background checks, HR 1446, has been voted down by the Senate 3 times, and it's just been reintroduced. And what do? They go on vacation until the 6th. It's unbelievable how little they're doing, and how these very young children who look up to adults to keep them safe, to bring them into the world, and they don't have anyone helping them or coming to save them. We look to the police because many people assume the police are there to protect us. Turns out they absolutely are not, and we're gonna get into that in a second. But it's just sad to think about, as human beings, this is what our children are thinking. No one's coming to save me when I'm in a situation where I'm unsafe. What do I do?
Yeah, and I know that like right now as we're filming this, the NRA has their convention going on in Texas, and there's at least something like 1,000 people outside. And I'm so happy that they are doing that. Of course, they can't achieve it by themselves. They're hoping that someone is gonna come to help them. They're dealing with the crisis. We're talking about a crisis. The crisis was the shooting, but people watching this need to understand that from the point of view of the right, that wasn't the crisis. The crisis is that, come on, it's been a couple of days and you guys are still talking about this. You're still asking me questions about this. Ted Cruz might have a Sky News reporter come up to him and ask inconvenient questions that he doesn't want to have to talk about. That is the crisis. The crisis is, how do I get to when we aren't talking about this shooting anymore? And they thought that they had made it right up until this shooting. We weren't talking about Buffalo, it had sort of tailed off. They doubled down on great replacement theory, and now everything was just back to normal. And now there's this, and they're just checking their watches. Is it another day? Is it, hey, it's a 3-day weekend coming up. Whew. That it was really looking like something might happen, but people will probably forget by then. The joke, I guess, is on them, because in America, we're gonna have multiple mass shootings between now and then. The only question, the only dice roll really is, will it get national pickup? Whichever place around America gets shot up over the weekend, will it actually get national coverage?
Yeah, honestly, before the Uvalde shooting, there was a story that we didn't do, I think it was last Friday, of 3 different shootings at high school graduations across the country on the same day. But we thought that that was too normal in America. Like in any other country, 1 high school graduation shooting would be the largest story in the country. For us, 3 on the same day, not even interesting. That's normal. Massacres are perfectly normal in America. Ted Cruz the other day said, oh, people are still coming here, best country on earth. Based on what? What are you citing a study? What are you citing? What are you talking about, best country on earth? Look, honestly, like a friend of mine asked me a while back, about a year ago, I'm thinking of going to Turkey, and there's a little bit of trouble in the Middle East. There's always a little bit of trouble in the Middle East. Do you think it's safe, right? I said, what are you talking about? It's infinitely safer than America. If you stay in your own neighborhood in America, your chance of getting shot is so much higher than if you're in a random Middle Eastern country. That's not even close to arguable. There's statistics, there's facts. No, this place is a war zone. There's literally war style, military style assault weapons in almost everybody's hands. And the cops have tons of AR-15s. They're standing outside doing absolutely nothing. And so our kids are massacred on a weekly basis. Look, there's a mass shooting, which is 4 people shot or more every single day in America. So I'm not at all exaggerating. It's Massacre Incorporated, brought to you by the gun industry. And again, our politicians do absolutely nothing. So I'm going to last things here on first on Biden. A bunch of reporters today asked this White House spokesperson about how Biden is doing nothing. I think it's a perfectly legitimate question. What the hell is he doing? He's on vacation. I mean, he's going to go down to Texas, but it's all empty, empty, empty words. He's proposing nothing. He's going to do nothing. It's Biden. His specialty is nothing. And so, but in the midst of 3 questions in a row, Kristen Welker asked, I think she's from NBC. She asked, well, Biden promised to bring Republicans and Democrats together. Why isn't he doing that on this issue? No, come on. Nobody's that stupid. What kind of an insane question is that? Mind you, it's Biden's fault for saying something so preposterous, right? Oh, the fever's gonna break and I'm gonna work with the Republicans. Are you that stupid? I'm asking a legitimate question. Is the president of the United States that stupid that he thinks the Republicans would work with a Democratic president? That is a super legitimate question. Every reporter should ask him that. But instead, they're asking him, why haven't you gotten the Republicans? Why don't you get the Republicans to work with you? Kristen Welker, you're a White House correspondent. You don't know the Republicans have voted no on every single one of these bills. It's absolutely impossible to move their blood-drenched hands into voting yes on gun control. So you make it seem like it's the Democrats' fault that the Republicans are monsters? Look, can you tell from this show that we can't stand Democrats? We can't stand Democratic leadership. We think they're impotent and incompetent. But to blame them for what Republicans did, and they do it like, and why do they do it? Why do they do it? Because they want to protect Republicans. Hey, everything's 50-50. I can't tell who's at fault. The powerful are wonderful, and so we're in the powerful incumbent protection racket in mainstream media. So golly gee, why didn't Biden get these murderous Republicans to work with him? Because they're murderous Republicans, because they take bribes. Hey, by the way, all the White House correspondents, wakey, it's the frickin' money. Are you all stupid? I'm serious, it's a serious question. Are you all stupid? Why don't you all ask every single senator that takes money from the NRA and gun lobby, isn't it the money? Ron Johnson, you took $1.2 million. Isn't it obviously the bribe that you took that leads you to these actions? Really, you're a reporter and you don't know to ask the most relevant question? Come on, our press corps is a joke, an absolute sick joke. So last thing, I promised you hope in the midst of all of this, the only thing that could ever move anything in this country is a major Republican losing. It hardly ever happens, and I'm not sure that it's gonna happen in this case. In fact, I'd be a little to a lot surprised if it happened. But if Beto O'Rourke, who was one of the very, very rare Democrats who was aggressively for gun control, beats Greg Abbott in Texas, that will be a sea change in American politics. Because then the message will be, oh my God, even Republicans could even lose in Texas because they didn't do any gun control. And then all of a sudden, all those little rats, the little scurrying politicians, where's power, where's power, where's power? Oh no, I might lose my power, it's about me. Oh, you're dead because I never cared, but it's about me. I might lose my power. And then all of a sudden, Ted Cruz might think about gun control. Why? Because it's about his sorry ass. So look, I got no love for Democrats, but if you're in Texas, vote against Greg Abbott, the monster Greg Abbott that has allowed all this, and you might send a booming message to the rest of the country.
I think Cenk raises a few good points, especially about when we think about what a good country is. America, calling it the best country in the world, and people questioning, well, is going to another country safe? When I think about what makes a country good or a society good, it's definitely not people killing each other. And people always point to, well, we have really fancy cars and really fancy buildings and everyone has iPhones. That's not the mark of a good society to me. It's people having resources, people living good lives, people not murdering each other in the streets. And it would also involve a functioning democracy, and nothing paints the picture of a dysfunctional democracy as well as the data that now 88% of people support universal background checks, but time and again it's voted down pretty much 50-50, Republicans pushing it over the margin.
Yeah, and I would only throw out another poll that I saw today. It was on an assault weapons ban, and I believe it was 51 overall, 51% approval, like 32% disapproval. So almost 2-to-1 supporting it versus not. When we are told, no, you're crazy, that's the most controversial thing. Everybody loves assault rifles, we can never get rid of them. They're not even gonna try to, that's not on the table, but you should know what the truth is. And with that said, we should probably take our first break. If you thought Cenk got worked up in that first story, wait until we get to the second one. We'll be back in a minute.
All right, back in the Young Turks, Cenk, John, and Jessica with you guys. But remember, there is no show without Arturo Gutierrez, Melissa Verduin, Cookie, and Porky. They all just joined, okay? Porky, I can't read the rest of your handle, and you know that. Okay, so.
I'm a little bit uncomfortable with what you did read.
Okay, anyways. So guys, seriously, membership makes this possible and allows you to have a voice in media. So tyt.com/join, or if you're on YouTube, just hit the join button below. All right, John, go ahead.
Okay. Porky, consider just being Porky Dragon. It would make us all a lot more comfortable. Anyway, with that said, we got to go back into very dark material, so everyone bear that in mind. The explanations from police as to why it took them so long to actually engage with the shooter in the Uvalde mass shooting, it's been ever evolving, and none of the explanations have been good. But what we're about to show you might be among the worst. Take a look at this.
But don't current best practices, Lieutenant, call for officers to disable a shooter as quickly as possible, regardless of how many officers are actually on site?
Correct. The active shooter situation, you want to stop the killing, you want to preserve life, but also one thing that, of course, the American people need to understand is that officers are making entry into this building. They do not know where the gunman is. They are hearing gunshots. They are receiving gunshots. At that point, if they proceeded any further, not knowing where this suspect was at, they could have been shot. They could have been killed. And at that point, that gunman would have the opportunity to kill other people inside that school.
Okay, so what was added in that interview was that the reason they didn't want to move in was because they were worried about being shot.
He just said it.
I think we all understood that going in. I don't think that we needed that to be made explicit. Yes, you could be shot. Yes, you could be killed. On some level, that is an understandable fear. It's also a nature of the job that all of these people signed up for and have been provided body armor for, and weapons and training. And when you have so many of them, the expectation is that someone is supposed to move past those natural fears that might stop someone like me from rushing in, but it's your obligation. And by the way, that's the explanation that was given, but is that the real reason they didn't go in? I don't know. They've been saying all sorts of things over the past day. We're gonna catch you up a little bit. First of all, understand, if you're just joining the story, that people were justifiably angry that parents had to wait outside for what felt like more than an hour before they finally moved in. The number keeps going up. Yesterday it was 40 minutes between when he went into the school and when the cops finally engaged with him. Now apparently the best estimate is 78 minutes. And during that time, fired more than 100 rounds. During that period, you had kids calling in, and we're gonna return to that. But one of the things that they admitted today was that they did make the wrong decision in not moving in faster, but there's a reason they made that decision. And I wanna read this for you. Law enforcement said that they acknowledged that it was the wrong decision. They said that they had a barricaded hostage situation, okay? They didn't think it was an active shooter situation anymore. It was a barricaded hostage situation. So there's no reason to rush it, no reason to move in. No one else is at risk. Okay, that's what they said. They said they were convinced that there was no more threat to the children and that the subject was barricaded and that they had time to organize with the proper equipment to go in. That's what they said. There's no reason to go in, no one's at risk. A correspondent for the New York Times has compiled just a list of the calls 911 received from kids in that schoolroom during the time that they were waiting outside. And I want you to look at those. So many student calls saying that people are dead, saying that people have been shot. Additional shots being heard on the call. The fact that the shooter is still firing his gun seems to go against the idea that there's no additional risk and this is just a negotiating situation at this point. So look, I don't know. Maybe by now they've already dispensed with this excuse and they've moved on from the, oh sure, mistakes were made, but we thought we were just gonna be negotiating with this guy. When you look at the actual facts, the facts that were already publicly available by the time this new excuse was trotted out, it just makes a mockery of the entire thing. Why anyone would believe official statements from the police makes no sense to me.
Okay, so look, the police have been lying our entire lives about everything. Oh, we never abuse black people. And the minute we get smartphones, you see hundreds of cases instantly. You think they popped up at the same time as smartphones? No, they've been doing it all along. And they did it even after we saw it, right? And they say, oh, we never did it, we never did it. And why do we even have this absurd idea that cops don't lie? Because the media tells you all the time, cops never lie. Are you insane? Have you ever met a cop? Okay, I mean, look at him. And so this one is so over the top that even Tucker Carlson and Brian Kilmeade on Fox News are like, no, they're obviously lying. Even they have to admit it, right? So look, so Sacha Baron Cohen goes out there and says, well, they could have been killed. Okay, he looks like that, I know. It's just a tiny bit of levity here in this tragedy.
I know what you were talking about it for.
So he goes out there and he's like, well, the cops could have been killed. Oh my God, you don't say. It's like the fire department saying, well, if we rushed into a burning building, we could have been killed. Yeah, that's your goddamn job. And the fire department never says that. But the cops say it all the time. In fact, I'm gonna show you a clip of what I said yesterday. At the time, people were outraged by this. It became like a little bit of a national news story. Like, how could he say this? And then right after I said this, that dude came out and said, well, come on. We could have been killed. Not the kids, who cares? Us. The more important, valuable people could have been killed. So this is what I said yesterday. You know how there's ACAB, all cops are bastards? I don't know that that's true, and we've talked about that in the past. But I'm going with ACAC, all cops are cowards. It's not because they're born cowards. It's not that they're less courageous than the average person. No, they go into the police academy and they're taught cowardice. They're taught, you are more important than the citizens. Cops will openly say, we got to protect ourselves first. Well, then you're a coward and you weren't born that way. You were taught you must be a coward. And guys, that's why Borat on national TV says without missing a beat, yeah, of course we didn't go in, we could have been killed. Because he thinks that's normal. Why does he think that's normal? Just like I told you yesterday, it's because they're trained that your lives are more important than the citizens. Your lives are more important than kids' lives. Why would you risk your precious life as a cop to save other people's kids? And I say other people's kids because the cops rushed in to save their kids, then came back out and did not go back in to save the other kids. I mean, it is the picture of cowardice.
This is exactly why when people are calling to defund the police, the response where people say things will become so unsafe for us if we defund the police, it's just not true because time and again, we see cases go before the Supreme Court that uphold this principle that the police don't actually have a duty to protect the citizens unless they're in government custody. And a lot of people have said, well, public schools, that's a government facility, government funding makes it operate, government staff are what the teachers teaching the kids, but that's not considered government custody. It's only jails, prisons, and mental institutions. So the cops have no duty to protect the citizens. So what are they there for, is my question. They're not making us more safe. They're criminalizing a lot of behavior that many of us don't consider criminal, right? It's not hurting anyone else. We see time and again racial policing leading to people getting charges for disorderly conduct, which is entirely up to the cops' discretion. So they're over-policing certain communities, not making them more safe, oftentimes shooting members of the community because they say that their own lives are in danger. But we saw exactly how police act when their lives are in danger. They didn't even go near the guy with the gun. So it's pretty clear how police act in those situations, and it's time to have a real conversation about defunding the police. Because if they're not there to make us more safe or protect us, what are they there for?
Yeah, and I just want to be clear. Look, there's two different problems in runaway crime. One is some of the laws that have been passed that basically give you no consequences for breaking the law. And we're fair and reasonable on all that. We tell you exactly what the issues are, right? But the second problem never gets discussed. The cops hardly ever respond to calls. And they will literally say, what's the point? We're gonna bring him in, and then at some point he's gonna be released. So, I mean, there was a guy who we didn't cover it on the show, but here in LA, guy goes and starts masturbating in front of a nail salon for 40 minutes. Cops never show up. They get called, like the guy, publicly, what are you guys? Nope, no, you know why? Because they wanted to wait till he was gone, because they didn't want to bother dealing with him. All cops are lazy, and everybody knows that. Have you ever been inside a police department and tried to report a crime? I've done it many times. Like 2 out of 3 times. They're like, oh, come on. You want me to fill out paperwork? No, go inside a police department. You'll think the DMV is like the most efficient thing you've ever seen in your life. They're like in moving molasses. They're so slow because they've been trained, don't do any work. You might get a paper cut or a hangnail. Don't do any work. Go inside a police station. You know it. You know it. Then we did a story 2 weeks ago. The LA cops catching Pokemon. And the funny thing is, they get fired because other cops asked for support and they didn't go. And they were instead, what they were planning to do was go join the other cops at the local 7-Eleven. None of the other cops got fired. They're hanging out at 7-Eleven. Is their job. Oh, being a cop is so tough. No, it's not. The world's easiest job. You have no risk at all. The minute any risk pops up, you murder it or you run away from it, and all you do is sit and eat donuts. So if you did your job, maybe funding makes sense. But if you're doing no job at all and you want us to give you more funding for your lazy asses and for you to train cops to sit there and let other people die because they're so goddamn precious, then no, your job's not at all easy. It's preposterously easy and heartless. Do your goddamn jobs, protect the citizens.
My final thought, I'm gonna come at it from a slightly different angle. Because as I said in my intro, in that situation, I'd be scared to go in. Except the guy's got an AR-15. It's like going up against any soldier in any military in the world. So, this is my appeal to the cops of the world. So if you think ahead to being in that situation, how terrified you would be, why aren't you on our side in banning those weapons? If the weapons are so terrifying that 19 cops are scared to break into a room because one person has one of those weapons, why aren't you on our side advocating for them to be banned? Why are you at least passively, if not actively encouraging the next mass shooter to have a weapon that leaves you paralyzed, that you can't conceive of going up against it? And by the way, I don't want you to go up against it. I want you to be dealing with criminals that are less well equipped than you, that don't have the capacity to gun down a dozen cops at one point. And I think a lot of cops would be angry at me for even bringing this up. The idea that I don't think that these gunmen should have ammunition that can penetrate your body armor. I don't think that they should have magazines with such a capacity that they can go up against an entire group of cops, that they can mow down an entire room of kids without having to reload. Why aren't cops allies in trying to ban the things that leave them terrified?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I've got to add 2 last things here because yes, John is right. I hope to God I would be brave enough to go into that building, but I'm not sure. I'm sure you're all not sure, right? But I am sure that somebody was brave enough to do that, and that's Angela Rose Gomez. So she's the one that was yelling at the cops to go in, and instead they tried to arrest her and they handcuffed her. Luckily, she got out of the handcuffs through a friend. She rushed into the building and grabbed her own kids and came out with no weapons. See, that's courage. That's a hero. By the way, the cops also lying about a monumentally important part of the story. We've been asking for a couple of days on the air. I'm like, wait, he barricaded himself in one room. Then how did Angela Rose Gomez get her kids out. And then we heard other parents rushed in and got their kids out. And an off-duty cop helped a friend get his kids out. So how are they getting the kids out if the cops, if the shooter is barricaded in one room and it's a hostage negotiation? First of all, there's no negotiation. As one of our viewer members just pointed out, the guy got so bored, he must have been wondering, the shooter, like, aren't the cops ever gonna come in? And Jessica pointed out during the break, yeah, he put on music. He must have gotten bored. And it turns out, no, there were kids in 4 different rooms. So they could have saved so many of the kids. While the shooter was in one room, they could have saved the kids from the 3 other rooms. Not only are they totally cowardly, they're also unbelievable liars. Look, as a general rule, if a cop is talking, he's lying. It's a rebuttable presumption. It's possible that it's a rare situation where a cop doesn't lie. Okay, I'm willing to hear that out, okay? But your general assumption should be, especially about a situation they're involved in, they're definitely lying to protect themselves because we know they never do their job. So if they're telling you they did their job and they did it right, that is very, very unlikely. Last thing to prove my case about how they don't care about anybody else but themselves. Do you know that it's standard policy across the country that if police shoot someone and they're bleeding out, they don't get the medical attention right away. The first thing they do is handcuff them. And then they wait for medics to potentially arrive. And we've done countless stories of people dying while handcuffed because the cops won't treat them. How could it be a danger if you've already shot the guy and you've handcuffed him and you think, no, I'm not gonna give him help anyway? Well, if that ain't the definition of a coward, I don't know what is.
Yeah, for some forward-facing, just to end this with, some forward-facing dialogue, I would point to a lot of communities forming these groups of members of the community who will respond to calls of domestic abuse, mental health problems, issues of poverty. This is happening in Atlanta right now where you can call 311. And it's true that many police officers don't live in the communities that they serve. So who went into the school? It was members of the community whose children were in the school. They loved the people in the school enough to protect them. And so we need people serving and protecting the community who actually love the community enough to protect it. It's very clear the police do not.
Well, why don't we take our last break of this hour? We come back. I know Cenk has some hope that maybe Fox is shifting a bit on this. We're gonna take a look at some of the video and figure out what's what after this.
All right, back on TYT, Cenk, John, and Jessica with you guys. John, take it away.
Okay, let's see if maybe there's any cause for optimism on Fox News this week. Take a look at this.
2 days after this massacre, authorities are slowly admitting that everything they told us was in fact untrue. There was no school resource officer. They're not even sure the door was barricaded. These matter, these questions.
Okay, so Tucker, he's getting frustrated with the cops now. Fox News starting to finally realize after only their entire lives that cops might lie, that at official police press conferences, you can't necessarily trust what they have to say. That has been true their whole lives. It's never bothered them before because they've liked the lies that cops have told. But now they understand that everybody is really angry about the Uvalde mass shooting and they're supposed to pretend for a few days that they're angry too. And so we're gonna go into a little bit more of some of their hosts having an issue with all the lies. Here's a bit more of Tucker Carlson.
So the point is not to point fingers or blame people. Nobody wants a school shooting. Everyone's heart is broken by it. But the authorities are not allowed to lie to us in the aftermath of an event like this. Even at the Parkland school shooting, when police staged outside as students were being murdered, police wound up inside the building 11 minutes after the shooter. But in this case, it was 16 minutes. Why was that? We have a right to know. But today, police wouldn't say. Was there a school resource officer who exchanged fire with the gunman? That's not something you would imagine. That either happened or it didn't, and you would know right away if it happened or it didn't. It didn't happen, but they said it did happen. That's a lie. Why did they lie? No matter how pro-law enforcement you are, and we are, there's only so much BS you can take in the face of a tragedy like this.
At least until a few more days go by and then he'll stop talking about it. So look, he's at least admitting that the cops are lying. My, I guess, knee-jerk reaction would be, and thus what will change about Tucker Carlson and his approach to policing or the funding of policing? What sorts of candidates will Tucker Carlson support and endorse in the future? What will their approaches to law enforcement or gun control will be? Like nothing is going to change. So that's my frustration. Tucker Carlson is good at reading the room and getting an idea, if belatedly, when he's wrong on a topic. It took him several weeks, for instance, on the war in Ukraine. But I don't think that he's actually going to change. He's not going to be more questioning of the cops, but maybe you're more optimistic.
No, I mean, that would be ironic, but no, I do see something breaking at Fox News. Like this, apparently there's a line. Before, we never saw a line in our entire lives. From the minute that Fox News went on air to now, there was no bottom to that barrel. But now several anchors coming out going, maybe all those dead kids is a slight problem. Maybe we should do something. Maybe that cop who's obviously lying, maybe we'll report for the first time in Fox News history that a cop might have lied. And so,
but wait, really fast though. His issue is that there might not have been an armed cop outside of the front door. Like at the end of the day, what he wishes was true is the same stuff that all those other Fox hosts and Republican politicians have been calling for. Tucker Carlson, unless I've missed it, is not saying we can't trust these cops. This whole situation is crazy, and thus let's ban assault rifles.
No,
he just wants more armed people on schools.
No, John, I totally get that, but we're not looking for like it. Overnight, Fox News go, we were wrong. We're now progressives. Of course not, right? But the reason why this is important, we're gonna show you a couple more clips. The reason why this is important is because their audience, remember, does not watch any other media. So for their entire lives, that right-wing audience has been taught and brainwashed that cops are the most angelic, most honest people you will ever meet. So for the first time in their lives, they're hearing from right-wing media that maybe cops are liars, at least on some occasions. And that's a new thought for them. It introduces a new concept, and that is the beginning of change. And I'm not giving Fox credit, I'm just pointing out, even they couldn't take this. And you'll see more in a second.
Yeah, I think, Fox is incapable. All of their hosts, their producers, the people who fund them, incapable of doing anything outside of their own self-interest. And I've been thinking, what is their self-interest in actually supporting gun control? And if you think about it, every single mass shooting that we've had recently has been either deliberately or pretty clearly racist, right? Or has had clear racial undertones. And who is pushing white nationalist rhetoric? It's Fox. So if there is ever a violent response in some capacity to these mass shootings, Fox is a huge target. And I honestly think they're starting to get scared that they're complicit and sometimes the cause of these mass shootings. And also I would point to guns in America being used to uphold white supremacy now and since our country's founding. And when I think about federal background check legislation, including misdemeanors like disorderly conduct, like simple possession of marijuana, that's going to disarm the communities most affected by over-policing. There's a reason that Reagan was pushing gun control when the Black Panthers decided to arm themselves. And so I don't think Fox's intentions are pure, but that doesn't mean that this can't have a positive impact.
Okay, I will try to be optimistic. I will try to push out of my mind that Tucker Carlson spent the entirety of 2020 being perfectly fine with the cops brutalizing protesters in cities throughout America, breaking people's skulls and driving into crowds. And he didn't have an issue with Trump black bagging people and tossing them in the back of unmarked vehicles. And he was fine with them clearing protesters out of the front of the White House, battering people who are just playing guitars. He is one of the most active enthusiasts for a tyrannical police state. So I'm gonna take his newfound criticism of the cops with some massive grains of salt, some Anna Kasparian sized grains of salt. But in any event, he's not the only person at Fox. So let's go to a person who admittedly has been more reasonable more times than Tucker Carlson. This is Brian Kilmeade.
The kids were bleeding. So the sooner you get in there, who knows what an EMT could have been able to do had they got in there quicker. And they're not trained essentially to handle this. And there's no excuse to leave that back door open. And there's no excuse to come out with some fable that they were engaged by a resource officer that was armed when that is flat out fiction. That's not bad communication. That is a lie.
And like I said, Brian Kilmeade, I think, is among the most reasonable people at Fox. My issue even with that is he is now identifying a problem, cops lying, that trains the audience to think a solution is more honest cops or more brave cops, when those are not the solutions. The solutions are for the guy to not have an AR-15.
Well, I could use some more brave cops too. And by that, I mean, don't train them to not ever risk their lives. Don't train them that their lives are more valuable than the citizens' lives. So that's how you get braver cops, if you don't teach them to be cowards. Sure. So it's a start. And look, Brian Kilmeade's no lib either. I mean, by a long stretch, he's wrong 98% of the time. So wow, he's better than Tucker Carlson by a couple percentage points, right? Yeah. But this isn't about Brian Kilmeade or Tucker Carlson being good guys. This is about even Fox News apparently having a limit and going, well, I guess dead kids are bad. And they obviously lied, and they obviously didn't go in the building. Even we can't cover this up.
Okay.
Yeah, I think there are pieces of the problem that are being addressed by some of the legislations and solutions that are being, produced at this time. But I think in this moment, we've really got to think about comprehensive solutions. And I want to quote Akila, who's an organizer and community leader, who said this week, "The solution to school shootings is not arming the teachers. The solution to school shootings is not putting more police in schools. It is crazy to think the solution for gun violence in schools is to put more guns in schools. The solution is funding these schools, the community, providing living wages, addressing poverty, homelessness, providing universal access to healthcare, therapy. The solution is so far beyond gun reform or gun control. Get rid of the Second Amendment entirely, disarm the police, then disarm the people. You've been lied to, and the experiment has gone horribly wrong. And with that said, you should be defunding the police, defunding the military, and reallocating that money to the people and these communities." And I think, that's a really big statement, and there will be a lot of people saying something like that's never gonna pass through Congress right now. Nothing is passing through Congress right now, not even the compromise legislation, HR 1446. And I think in this moment, we need a response of equal magnitude to the problem.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll take background checks. I mean, if they banned assault rifles, I would be ecstatic. Look, I'll be honest, I'm afraid that the defund police talk now is just gonna help them go, oh, that's it, we're not doing anything. Because doing something means defunding the police. And now everybody's even more scared for their kids. So I don't love the timing on that, if I'm being honest. So, and defund the police is over here. 17 incredibly reasonable, massively popular positions are right here, and we won't even take the first inch towards that. So, but we have one more Fox anchor here, Martha McCullum, actually proposing some degree of gun control, never seen before on Fox News.
It's a guardrail, right? If you make it a 21 law, or as someone suggested, even making it so that you have to have, you can't rent a car until you're 26 years old in this country. And everybody likes to go driving on the weekends too, right? But you can't do that. You can't rent a car until you're 26. Another suggestion is to have an older adult of a certain age who comes along with you for the purchase of that gun in order to have that background check done. There are things that will not take away anyone's freedom and that might help to save some lives. And I think it's time for people to come together on both sides of the aisle and figure out what some of those might be.
See, I already see John getting frustrated at what a minuscule proposal that is.
No, I'm okay with most of that. It is minuscule, but it's Fox. That I'm okay with. I was more getting frustrated, like she's pointing out the thing with the car and everything. I was just thinking about the fact that in Texas you literally can't smoke marijuana. Too dangerous marijuana. You can have an AR-15, which would allow you to serve in like most militaries around the world, but weed too dangerous. So I'm frustrated, but I'll take all the things she just said.
But if saying that you can't buy a gun until you're 26, as she's partly alluding to there, that would be the biggest gun control law we've had in decades in America.
Yeah. And
even Fox News is saying, well, I mean, why don't we do that? And by the way, Geraldo also argued for gun control in that segment. In another segment, Neil Cavuto challenged Senator Ron Johnson, saying, because he said the school shootings are because of critical race theory, because he's a lunatic. And Cavuto said, but school shootings have been happening long before CRT. So that's anchor number 4 or 5 now. And then they had Lee Greenwood on, and he has songs about how he's proud to be an American, which, by the way, secretly I love. It's not such a secret, I've said it many times. And he was gonna go, he's a big conservative, and he was gonna go sing at the NRA convention. He pulled out, and he was on Fox News, and he said on Fox News, I can't be supporting these guns that got all these kids killed.
Yeah.
That's why I came out of the convention. So it is the first time a conservative audience is hearing that guns might not be so great and that cops might not always be honest. To me, that's a huge development.
Sure, yeah.
Okay, we got time for one quick story.
Yes, and I will just say that it's weird that none of the past mass shootings and the NRA support for it made him not want to go to that. It took this one. What about Buffalo? Buffalo was last week. It's fine, I'll take it. Just seems a little weird. But anyway, let's turn away from guns finally to talk about something completely different. The right wing can't go a week without getting freaked out about something, and they don't need it to actually exist to scare the hell out of them. Did you know that Pop, the Rice Krispies treat mascot, is now transgender? Take a look at this headline there from CNN. Kellogg's spokesperson announces Rice Krispie mascot Pop is now a trans woman. Isn't that terrifying? And isn't that fake? That isn't real. Now that, of course, was being spread on something like 4chan. Like, it would take 2 seconds to search to find out whether that was true or not. But people on the right don't care. They like the rush of being infuriated about something like this. And you might think, well, come on, John, why is the Young Turks focusing on this? So somebody on a forum got a little bit worked up about a fake news story. Well, I don't know, I got a couple of reasons that maybe we should care about it. Take a look at this shot from Snopes. This is the shares of it all over social media. All it takes is one weirdo on 4chan photoshopping a CNN headline, and it's everywhere. And there is a good chance that over the weekend you're gonna meet up with your family and your uncle or your cousin is gonna bring up the fact that these damn libs have turned Pop trans.
First it was the M&Ms, now it's this. I mean, I think back to the green M&M controversy. It's like they're so bored and so obsessed with like queer and transgender culture.
Yeah.
And our elected officials, the members of Congress, every time someone is on the floor of Congress giving testimony, they're like, what is a woman? And at this point, I think they really want to know. Like, I think they actually want a good answer. And it's sad that like everyone who's been on the floor of Congress hasn't actually given a good answer. It's not that hard to say, well, like sex is biological, it's the parts you were born with. Gender is how you feel about yourself on a spectrum of feminine to masculine usually. And your sexuality is the people you prefer to be your partners. Very simple. No one has said that on the floor of Congress. So if any, members of Congress that have posed the question, what is a woman, are watching, that is what a woman is. But assuming the gender of cartoons that represent corporations, what stage of the demise of a society are we in when this is what they're focusing on with what's going on in the news is happening?
Grant Stinchfield at Newsmax then started talking about whether the leprechaun in Lucky Charms is gay because he wears high-heeled shoes and is cheery. I don't know if he was joking. I just literally don't know if he was joking. He might have been joking, but given that they take this stuff super seriously, he might have been serious. And then I think his co-host was like, well, he's been around a long time. Like, so it's not like a new thing where they turned the leprechaun gay. Maybe he was gay the whole time.
He's fictional.
It's how the cartoons are not actually having sex with anyone. Because they're cartoons.
Well, I mean, look, if you go on certain internet forums, you can see them having sex with people. But I'm saying it's not on the box of cereal that you see it.
It's just because it has rosy cheeks and a ponytail. That's really it. And they're like, this is a woman, in my opinion. Not only that, a transgender woman, very specific. They're just projecting onto these cartoons all of their fears and insecurities. It's insane to watch.
And what kind of a person looks at, the Rice Krispies and goes, I wonder about their sexuality. Like, what's wrong with you? But look, I think the biggest point out of this whole story is the right wing doesn't mind lying at all. Like, it's a lie factory. They produce, and now you see us covering it all the time. There's dozens of examples. There is no similar factory on the left wing. Can somebody on the left wing lie from time to time? Of course, they're humans, right? But is there like a meme making factory where they just like on a regular basis create memes that are lies about the Republicans and then send them out? No, there's no equivalent at all. But the Republicans lie as their normal base of operations. That's their modus operandi, okay? And then the other thing about the right wing is they're so gullible. The minute they see this, they're like, that's it, I believe it instantly. Like, for God's sake, like John said, I mean, it's a little strange, don't you think? Maybe do a 2-second Google search. Like, but they don't want to know the truth.
Yeah.
They like these lies. And why? Because they love being victims. That's their favorite thing in the world. So when they talk about victimology and victim complex, it's nothing but projection. They're like, oh my God, war on Christmas. Somebody said happy holidays to me. I'm a victim. And they genuinely believe it. And they're like, oh my God, Rice Krispies pop is trans. I'm a victim. First of all, how does it even affect you? He's a cartoon. He can't come into your bathroom. He's not going to compete with your daughter in sports. How does it affect you? I'm a victim. I'm a victim. I'm going to tell all my family in Thanksgiving. Okay, that's conservatives.
Yeah.
Their favorite hobby by a landslide is crying. All right, we gotta go. You guys are amazing. Everybody check out Damage Report. Everybody check out Jessica on Rebel Headquarters. You guys are gonna love it. When we come back, J.R. Jackson and Michael Schur, and the story of Republicans and why they say they need AR-15s. Oh my God. The only one dumber than Ron Johnson and is Bill Cassidy. Those two senators, you're not gonna believe what they said. We'll be right back. Thanks for listening to the full episode of The Young Turks. Support our work, listen ad-free, access members-only bonus content, and more by subscribing to Apple Podcasts at apple.co/TYT. I'm your host, Cenk Uygur, and I'll see you soon.